Yes, welcome. Today's episode 4 of Podcasters Unleashed. I'm here again with my lovely co-hosts from all over the world to tell you how unique, how interesting this dynamic group is. We have someone who's actually on here to show you the level of commitment that we have. See, listen, today we'll be talking about the COVID vaccine passport that has been introduced by different governments all over the world. And the passport initially is to like show your the status of how if you've gotten the first jab or second jab. And I don't know how they are pushing it very soon by the government. We don't know if there's an agenda. But before we go into this, I would like to introduce my co-host starting from Carla.
Hey everybody, I'm Carla and I'm the host of the Wonder and Wellbeing podcast, which is a podcast for parents and educators and anyone who's interested in education and wellbeing around children. Over to you, Howler.
Hi, I'm the host of the podcast Women's Stories, where I share real stories from real women around the world. So tune in for new episodes. Over to you, Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon Rushton. My podcast is Taxi Chronicles, where I interview people from all around the world, traveling around London, and they tell me their personal stories, joys, sorrows, and happiness, and entrepreneurs. So have a listen. We're on all major platforms. Over to you, Matilda.
Hello, I'm Matilda, host of Coffee with Matilda, Journey to Self, and my podcast is about finding yourself, loving self, and coming out of adversity stronger than ever. Over to you, Victor.
Yeah, thank you, Matilda. Thank you very much for the effort. You're a true team player. See, in case when Matilda is speaking and you hear the feedback, just know that she's on an airplane right now and she's flying all over the world. So just pardon the cabin pressure. Yeah. So the vaccine passport is on a baseline is just to show how fully vaccinated that you are. So we have skeptics, people that are for, people that are against, and people that are like in between. So let me just throw it out there. Hey guys, who is for and who is against, or who is just in between? Hala.
You already know my answer, Victor. So yes, I'm against the vaccine. But that doesn't mean that I'm an anti-vaccine. It means that I'm just against any vaccine that is not tested, and if it contains toxic chemicals that could weaken the immune system, it could be harmful and it could weaken your health. And if you can use the analogy, if you said to someone, if you don't eat, for example, fast food, it does not make me an anti-food. It just, I don't like that type of food. So it's the same with the vaccine for me.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, Simon, are you for, are you against, or in between?
There's no in between for me. I've interviewed enough people who are from pharmaceutical companies to people who work in the NHS, and I've heard both sides of the stories. In the end of the day, I've been okay. I'm not for it for myself. If other people feel they're scared and that's their comfort drug or their comfort vice, and fair enough. But from what the government says is contradictory about, oh, you can go outside or you can stay in, and oh, now you have to quarantine if you've had the vaccine, and then other people still getting sick even though they've had the vaccine, and many people dying, but the government doesn't want to admit it. And the main thing is, for me, they haven't done the testing period. It's a 7 to 10 year testing period. It's a minimum standard. And then if you're looking in American terms, the FDA haven't endorsed it, and they won't, because they know they don't want to be liable. And this is why the government I believe, hasn't made it mandatory. And they just try to coerce people so they don't have to take responsibility.
Oh, okay. Matilda, you're currently traveling right now. Did you have any issue with vaccination or the passport or showing your status?
Well, yeah, because we wanted to go to France, and I think it's very complicated in France. You don't have your vaccine, you cannot go out, and you cannot have a like public life. So that's why we don't go. I mean, we kind of changed our plans a little bit because we don't want to get vaccinated at the moment. But I'm thinking that I should get vaccinated soon. I don't know. Sasha is against it, but I think it's right thing maybe. It's not that I'm against vaccination. It's just I'm not sure if it's tested for health reasons. I don't know, but maybe I should get a vaccine. I'm kind of I don't know what I should do.
Okay, that's cool. Carla, do you know what you're going to do? Are you vaccinated or you're going to, Carla?
I am going to observe, which is something I do quite a lot. I'm going to observe and I'm going to listen before making a decision a little bit longer, I think. I spend a lot of time indoors and it doesn't really affect my lifestyle at the moment. So I'm not in a rush to take a vaccine. And I still think, like Simon said, I think we still need a bit more information about it. And for me personally, I would like to wait and see what happens. And when it gets to a stage where it's affecting my life and the way I interact with other people and their life, then maybe I would change my mind. But at the moment, I'm not taking it at this time.
Oh, and yeah, that's cool. I'm considering taking it very soon. Okay, and but the thing is, Hala, you are in France, and early this month, Macron said to critics that the vaccine passport will actually protect all your freedom. Do you believe him? What do you think?
Principle of human rights and freedom of choice. When it comes to any medical intervention, and we must respect the freedom of others, and it's not acceptable to the French to be threatened because the government is working for the French people and not the opposite. And I think the freedom of choice, it's an illusion we are living right now, because you can't do anything now in France if you're not vaccinated. You can just work for the moment if you are not in the health field work. So yeah, it's political. It's not just about your health, and if you are not in touch with the elders, or you are not in a high risk job, I don't believe that there is a need to take it. So yeah, this is my opinion about that.
Quick question for you, Victor. Can we? You said you're planning to take it. Is that because you feel under duress due to work or personal circumstances?
No, I've gone past that now because I'm traveling soon. So, and in the UK now, when you go and you are fully vaccinated, you don't need to quarantine when you get back. So I just want to put it under the bag, just take the first jab. And from friends and family who have already been vaccinated, I've not seen anyone growing a third arm or third leg or 2 heads yet. So I think I am on a base level right now to move. But do you think there's an agenda? Carla?
Yes, in the wider sense of agenda, what I would say is that there are certain people that benefit from the vaccination. So we can say that that's a sort of an agenda. There are certain companies, businesses, sectors of society that benefit from promoting vaccines, not just the COVID vaccine, but any vaccine at any moment. And I think that there are a lot of financial agendas attached to COVID, the whole COVID situation, as well as to the vaccines and the passport. But what that agenda is, I don't know. I wouldn't like to speculate on what the agenda is, but I believe that there are some agendas. and not necessarily negative. We often use the word agenda in a negative way. Maybe there are some positive and some negative agendas, which is usually the case with everything. So yeah, I do believe there are some agendas, and some people stand to benefit in maybe ways that we don't understand.
Matilda, I know because of where you are, you can't fully be part of this. But who do you think is being targeted? If there's an agenda, do you think anyone is being targeted, or people are just?
I don't know if you ask this from Sasha. He will say, "Oh, this is one world order. This is going towards a very different direction." But I don't know. I don't think. Okay, all these humans, they wanna, all these doctors and scientists, they want to kill us. I refuse to think like that. I feel like, I mean, it should be done, but again, my partner thinks otherwise, and he's really against it. And he thinks like the government, certain people ruling the world, and they want to take the world in a certain direction. That's something that we shouldn't allow. And he's French, so maybe he likes to be a rebellious towards the government and the authority. Cool. I'm Armenian. I'm going to America, so I'm cool.
Okay, we see that you're cool. Simon, should we all be cool about this and just like move on?
Well, depends on what you see as cool. I would say that would be my first answer to that part of the question. It's an interesting one because, like you said, you've had family members or friends who have taken it and they're okay. But then at the same time, there's people who could sing another story. And this is in any testing for drugs or vaccine process. And the fact that they never tested the vaccine on animals at the start, and they missed out the second stage as well, from my understanding, it does scream like, what is really going on? Is it really needed? And if they're saying this COVID is never going to go away, and we just have to get used to it like the common cold, which you could argue is an extreme version or not. Is it something that's to be brushed up, just like brushed off your back like dirt? Like, oh yeah, it's just one of those things. And is this a start of taking many vaccines regular? It's like every like the flu jab, every season you take the flu jab? Because if it is, like, I have an aunt who takes a flu jab, and she's been taking it for years, but she's always got caught the flu. Now, my thing is, I just started doing certain things like using black seed oil, eating more fruit, citrus fruits, and exercising, and I haven't got the flu. So it affects different people's in different ways.
Okay, Simon, you've done some research regards vaccination. Can you just tell us about your research when it comes to vaccination?
Yeah, the research I've done isn't like, it's basically where people who got into the car, and I've interviewed them, and whether they're a normal GP, and I find quite a few GPs are like pro-vaccine from the ones I've met. And then I've met other people who work in pharmaceutical companies who actually produce the vaccine, and they're like up top directors, and they said no, they're not taking it, even though their parents have took it, which is very interesting. And this is all, you can check this out on Taxi Chronicles. I should have actually been able to give you the episode number. But then I've also had people who work with testing vaccines and diseases and things like that. And that was the first interview I did, one of the first interviews I did. And the lady said she's not taking it, and nor is any of her loved ones, because they're trying to avoid, and this was at the very start of the whole pandemic thing, they've missed out the testing period, and that's vital. You can't just miss out a testing period. You don't know what the after effects are going to be. And I've spoken to I remember many years ago, before even the vaccination thing come into conversation, I spoke to one of those real private Bupa healthcare doctors who his office overlooks the Thames in a 3-piece suit and everything with a pinstripe. And he said it's not a good idea to take any drug that hasn't been around for 50 years, because only then you really know the true side effects.
But
Now,
the thing is,
excuse me,
we don't have 50 years, Simon.
But wait a minute. You say we don't have 50 years. I haven't took it and I'm still alive. So who's to say how long we have?
People are dying, Simon.
Yeah, but people are going to die anyway. Do you know last month more people died of pneumonia in England than they did of the COVID?
Yeah, because of the vaccine has taken effect, so it has reduced potency.
But that's if you want to believe that, because we all see what we want to believe, and that goes for both ways. But then you can also look at the statistics for how many people died overall last year in comparison to this year and the year before. And it's suddenly people are saying, oh, wait a minute, more people died in 2019 than did in 2020. But yet we are meant to have this massive pandemic. What happened?
Okay,
we didn't have the vaccination until the other day, really.
Let's bring Hala into this. Hala, what are your thoughts on Simon's line?
I kind of agree with Simon, because when the pandemic started, we were trapped in fear 24 hours in front of our TV, and they are telling us a huge number of people who are dying every day, and none of the health pandemic experts, and correct me if I'm wrong, they try to advise people on how to reinforce the immune system, or how to consume more organic food, or how to exercise more, or how to eat at least real food instead of fast food. This kind of advice and this kind of support that people needed, it wasn't there. It was like if you open the media during the pandemic, it was 24 hours, people are in fear. And when you are in fear, you shut down your immune system. And when you shut down your immune system, of course you're gonna be sick and you're gonna weaken your immune system. So I do think that the government didn't really support their people on this. And I think we need to take a deeper look on what's happening on this pandemic, and take a deeper look also on the history of the vaccine and the pandemic too. Because if you can see also in India, Indian doctors, for example, are blaming Bill Gates about what's happening for the polio vaccine that nearly paralyzed a lot of children. A lot of children were paralyzed from the polio vaccine in the 2017. So yeah, I kind of agree with Simon, Victor.
Okay.
Before we move on, let me just read out this comment from Rose. Have any of the panel been on the website of the makers of this product? And are you aware it's described as a device in some instances? I haven't. I'm not sure. Have any of you been on this panel? On the websites? No. If you'd like to expand, go on, Carla. Sorry.
Yeah, I have. Actually, I'm used to doing this, I think, because I've had children for so long. Like Howler just said, I'm not new to controversies around vaccines either, because when I had my first child 24 years ago, I remember having, there was a lot of controversy around the MMR vaccine and links to the MMR vaccine and autism. And it was a huge controversy, and actually it's still ongoing. And I think from then I got into the habit of just checking things like information-wise as a parent from a medical point of view. And that's why I said earlier that for me, when it comes to the COVID vaccine, I'm a bit like, let me just wait and see on this one, because it's not the first time that I've had to do that. It's not the first time that I've thought about giving vaccines carefully. You know, I learned that from my children, and understanding also that it is a conscious choice. You don't just blindly do or not do based on information that other people give you. You must be responsible to go on the websites, have a look at the information, and then make an informed decision, not based on fear, but based on consequences, not only for you, but for your child and for the people around you in your community. I think that is whether you take it or not take it, if you've done that with information rather than fear or being dictated to and just blindly doing things, that's a lot more responsible. So I have been on the website, and I think that you have to keep going on the website as well. So Rose, that's a really important question. I think you can't just go on the websites once. You have to keep going. If you are interested in getting information before you make a decision to have it, then you have to keep going on the websites, keep updating yourself with new information. And eventually you're going to have to get to a point where you say either yes or no anyway. But yeah, that is important. It's better to go on the website and see what they are claiming or what they are saying directly, rather than listen to all sorts of media and all that, which can get very confusing.
That's interesting. See, the thing is, the EU is like bringing out. Yeah, Matilda. Yeah, what do you have to say?
You know, how many of you had COVID or not? Had a very bad experience with COVID. I still have most of side effects that I'm not, but I'm still having some side effects after 8 months or 9 months of COVID. I'm not still back to my normal self. And right becoming, cousin was saying this, he thought he is positive and everyone got panicked. I'm getting panicking. What do I have? I cannot take another COVID for a time. So I don't know. I mean, yes, the vaccine subject can be very strange for all of us because they haven't been tested for a time. We don't know the consequences of it. But at the same time, having COVID is going to be it's a very scary. Some people, they take it very lightly. The body takes it lightly. Some people, they don't take it lightly. And, you know, even if you don't die, some side effects that come afterwards.
In responding to what Matilda said there, and I understand Matilda's gone through sickness and, you know, my heart goes out to her and everything. But also you have to look at the person's performance, as in that's Matilda's, how it's affected her. And then you can look at someone's background. Do they exercise anyway? Do they eat healthily anyway? And when I mean exercise, do you vigorous exercise at least 3 or 4 times a day? Do you actually make sure the food you're
3 or 4 times a day? Are you going for the Olympics?
Sorry, a week. So, okay. And there's a lot of things like that. And I was having a discussion with she's a receptionist in A&E in one of the major hospitals in London. And I was pointing out to her, I asked her a question. I said, how many times when someone comes in, and I'm not talking an accident, I'm talking a general sickness issue, do they usually have a six-pack and pecs, as in they've got a perfect shape? I was referring to men as that. And she paused for a moment, and then she goes, never. And I said, well, that kind of goes to show that a lot of people who are in hospital, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, aren't looking after themselves in the first place. You do get some exceptional, as a doctor who works in St. George's was pointing out. He said 81%. Most of the average age of people who die of COVID in London are over 80 is 81. Our national average for death is 76. So think of that. They've automatically surpassed their average lifespan 5 years. Doesn't mean that their death doesn't matter, but if you look at who's really been affected, and he also pointed out to me, and this is him telling me, he said he can guarantee, he said, out of every 100 people who get COVID, 4 people die. The rest just go on to live life normally. He said those 4 people who die. Bear with me. He said those 4 people who die. He said he can guarantee they always have an underlying sickness, even if they didn't know it. Now, this is what he's telling me. I'm not making this up. This is what he's telling me. So these are things I say we always need to take in consideration before putting something in our bodies that the government is encouraging us, considering they're corrupt, regardless whether it's a British government or someone else.
Yeah, corruption. That's another thing. I know Hala may have something to say about that. But Matilda, see, I just heard what Simon said. Is life back to normal for you? Because we all know that you were infected by COVID some time ago. After a certain, I think 5. Oh, okay, she's gone. She'll come back. Anyways, so this the COVID passport, the EU is launching or has launched the digital certificate for COVID, which you can download on their website. But what I want to know is how is it going to affect travel and jobs? Because Hala, you travel a lot. How is it going to affect you and your job?
Yes, well, of course, we are going to have restrictions for the non-vaccinated people. But again, for the passport, for the moment, vaccine passport for the moment in the European Union, it's either PCR test or the vaccine. So it's not limited to the vaccine. And the PCR test, it's for the moment, it's for free. But in France, in the beginning of the October, it will be paid. So people will go more to do the vaccination, which they tell people it's for free. But the vaccination, it's not for free because you're going to have taxes on it and they're going to rip your salary from it, whether if you are vaccinated or not. So it's not totally free. And of course, it will affect our freedom of choice. It will affect where we're going. There are a lot of countries from France that you can't enter to without a vaccination. And if you don't have vaccination, you need to have a reason why you are going to that country. But I do think people with power and people with powerful passports, they will always have the freedom to travel, either with passport, vaccine or not. So who are we limiting really? Are we limiting poor people or are we limiting the whole population? That's the question, because here there is the role of injustice that is playing right now. Back to you, Victor.
That's interesting. Carla, let me bring you into this. Do you think who do you think is being targeted? Who do you think will be affected by the vaccine passport, according to what Hala just mentioned?
Well, I think if we look at the way that things have played out since the beginning, everybody's been impacted by it in some way, shape or form. But the people who have been the most significantly impacted by it are those who are in the margins of society. Like everything that happens always affects the marginalized, affects the poor, affects the disabled. In certain countries, it affects certain immigrant groups. You know, for example, in the UK, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can't have a COVID vaccine. So they may say that vaccine is obligatory for everybody, let's say, for example. But can you turn up anywhere as an illegal immigrant without an NHS number and get a COVID vaccine without being deported? Probably not. So it's going to significantly affect poor people and anyone who's on the margins of society. And I think it's things like that that make people bring up the word agenda. That's when people start to tip their head and say, well, is that just as a consequence or a byproduct of the situation, or has that been orchestrated? Which is a natural thing that humans do when situations arise. They begin to ask questions. We get suspicious. We question narratives. And also it affects children, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. It does affect children in certain groups more than it affects, you know, others. So of course, poor people are going to be significantly impacted. They have been by COVID in the first place, but also the vaccine and the whole rollout of the vaccine and all this PCR test or vaccine and all of that, because most places the PCR test isn't free. And the cost of it to keep doing them over and over again, you've got to have the income to do that. And the same with travel. In order to take tests and prove that you're immune and all of these different things, it all costs money, and it's not a small amount of money either. So, you know, if you've got the money to cover all the inconveniences, then you're not as seriously affected, or you might be inconvenienced, but it doesn't have, you know, you might be a bit fed up and frustrated, but it doesn't have significant impacts on your life and your freedom, as Howler pointed out.
Thanks for just jumping in there, going to read some comments, but just before I read the comments, I'd say I got a WhatsApp message today with some celebrity guy. He's saying how when he flew economy on the normal plane, he was told to make sure he had a mask over his nose. And as soon as he went on a private jet and he paid 50 grand for the flight, no one had a mask on, no social distancing, no PCR test asked for or anything like that. So that just kind of emphasized what Carla's saying. But over to Anders Cardell, all the way from Sweden. Nice to have you back, Anders. It says, that's what I've heard too. But there's several other risks. One, the critical care demanded for COVID patients push all other healthcare aside. So people that were supposed to go for cancer checkups can't do it, and so on and so on. Excuse me. Two, the risk for the virus to mutate in a way that becomes completely uncontrollable. The mutation bit I find is quite interesting because I've never found a sickness that mutates so quickly. But anyway, moving on, we've got James Finney. Pfizer bill the government's $24 per dose. The international contracts are worth over 98 billion this year. Taxpayers pay that. Very good point, James. And nice to have you here today, James. Back to you, Victor.
Yeah. Who foots the bill right now? Who foots the bill? Are we all footing the bill? The
Well,
$24, are we footing the bill?
Well, actually, if you look at how the public foot the bill, big pharmaceutical companies get money from the government to research certain things that are vital to the government all the time. So so for a while they've been getting money just to research, yeah. Then the drug gets found, and also they get taxed and benefits and all the rest of it. And there's some agreements made. So what they're saying now, we will only sell the vaccine at cost. But the question is really, but you were given the money to manufacture it in the first place by us. So selling it to us at cost, it should be totally free because we've paid for it already. Do you see what I mean? That's like me paying for the petrol, and then you say, well, now it's in your car, I'm going to only charge you 5 pence per mile. But it's my car and I paid for the petrol. So there you have it. Back to you, Victor.
All right. Hala, how do you think the government should roll out or implement this? Do you think they were responsible in doing this?
Well, I don't know how to advise the government because I'm not in their place. But I do think that, for example, in France, liberty or freedom of speech is something very important for the country. So when you touch to that, you touch the whole population, and French people are very serious about this value. It's one of the value of the country. So when the government contradicts its value and threaten their population, I think there is a major issue here, and I think they are trying to control more and more people, and especially poor people who are not going to have enough choices in the future. So I think it depends on the value of the country and how they are really supporting their people.
Matilda, you have something to say.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting. Remind me something right now. Right now, Iran is in a SOS part because a lot of people are dying, and the situation is out of control. And a lot of people are accusing the government because they stopped bringing vaccines. So they're very upset. It's very interesting to see different countries how they're reacting. So like Iranians are upset at their government that where is the vaccine and we're dying. I was in Armenia and no one is getting vaccinated there. So there are vaccine tourists coming from actually Iran to Armenia, or some of the Arab countries to Armenia to get vaccinated, because the Armenian people don't like to get vaccinated. And in America is a different story too, because lots of young people, like even my age, they got vaccinated. So it's interesting that different cultures are how they're reacting to vaccine. And as France, it goes. It's fascinating to see all these people are demonstrating about their right of we don't want to get vaccinated and it shouldn't be forced. So just wanted to bring the culture in.
Yeah, that's good. Let's look at something else. You see, in Montreal, some couple of days ago, there was this huge riot, displeasure of citizens. Like they're just talking about, they're raising the voice about how the government of Quebec's government is implementing the vaccine passport, which means that without the passport, you can't get into restaurants, bars, gym, and certain essential venues. Simon, and one of the lawyers, according to David Ferrer, who is the lawyer, the human rights lawyer, said it's unconstitutional and it's immoral. Simon, you don't really believe this, but let's say hypothetically you go to the gym tomorrow morning, and before you swipe in or punch in your number, before you get in, they say, okay, there's a new regulation. We need to see your vaccine status. Where is the certificate? What would you do?
Ask for a refund and go for a jog and do pull-ups in a tree. It's not hard. It's not hard, is it? It's not hard, is it? There's many ways to exercise. The gym is a luxury, but if you really want to exercise and you're serious about your health, and this is what I'm always stressing to people. But when Anders has got a comment, and it says it was actually aimed at me to a certain extent, but not fully, Simon. And I believe that's in response to my comment about we as the public finance the vaccinations process, but or research, not just for vaccination on this vaccination, in research for medical process in general. But it doesn't matter whether it's fully or not. I would say that to you, Andrew, because at the end of the day, we're paying, and certain things we really need to pay for. And with corruption today, and like if I refer to London, all our politicians, top politicians, front benchers gave each other contracts worth $250 million, kind of speaks for itself. Went and bought country houses and things like that. But he's got another comment from Anders. Countries that don't vaccinate their population reminds of the HIV vaccine discussion that was raging in South Africa. Not sure what you mean by that, Anders, because there's no actual HIV vaccine. There's drugs you can take to suppress HIV if you have it. Yeah, and they recommend you don't take a suppressor because it causes too many medical issues if you do not have HIV. Another comment, we've missed one person here. But it's at that time, the medical companies were ruthless. They're always ruthless, Andrew. I'd say that to you. Sorry, is someone else touching the screen? Okay, thanks. James Fanny, will the Vax passport be just used for COVID? Given the removal of liberties, it will start being used for medical bias. Will diabetics be stopped at the shop counters, alcoholics blocked from bars? I think that's very interesting. And I think if you notice at the start of this whole vaccine thing, Bill Gates said on BBC News that we will come with a chip or a tattoo to verify that you've had the vaccine and you haven't got forged papers, which is strange because they've never done that for yellow fever or polio or anything like that. So there's something quite sinister about. And we've got one more comment. So sorry. Oh no, sorry, that was done already. Back to you, Victor.
Yeah, I think we have the yellow fever card for travelers in case you're traveling across board, but mostly for African countries coming into the Western into Western countries. You need to have the yellow fever card, and yeah, but I don't know if the vaccine passport would be like what Feni is alluding to, whereby it might be extended to alcoholics, diabetics, but it has great potential, and I think it's an open funnel. What do you think, Carla?
So we've got another comment from Anders. The leaders in South Africa first misled the population by being anti-vaxxers, or vaxxers, sorry, I believe you say. Now, I would say this to you, Andrew, seeing as your friend, and I know you very well. You have to consider this: the Afrikaners, yes, and we won't talk about race, just talk about, have specifically genetically created things to kill black people in general. So if we as black people are very suspicious of other people trying to give us stuff, there's a very valid reason behind that, mate. There's a very, very valid reason. He goes on to say people die like flies, and we've got Thomas here. Nice to have you here today, Thomas. God bless the Afghan girls. I will never turn my back on you men, are a joke, but they will get their big love for podcasters. I don't like COVID. I'm not sure what happens there. Okay.
Thomas, nobody likes COVID.
I know it's a suppressive medical Simon. Okay, then, Andrew. Back to you, Howler. Sorry about that.
Yes, Carla, do you think, because Finney said something about if the vaccine passport can be the vaccine passport has lots of potential to be used for alcohol, for bars and diabetics. What do you think about its potential? What can it be used?
I think that depends on who has a stake and who has control. And this is, I think, part of the reason why there's so many conspiracies around it, because we've had so many different narratives pushed and so many just things that have made us be like, really? We live in an information age where so much is spreading and it's become so confusing for so many people. But when it comes to that, you've got to ask questions like who would benefit and how would they benefit? And then you begin to think, okay, well, pharmaceutical companies benefit. People who get massive contracts for all the paraphernalia that's associated, for, all the gloves and the PPE and all that, all those manufacturers and people, they benefit. And we don't know who owns those companies. We have all these umbrella companies and all this dodgy stuff and all these contracts and all that. We're living in a time where politicians are becoming less and less trustworthy every day. Their ethics, their morals as individuals, and all of that. We've got politicians having affairs and getting caught on camera and doing all sorts of things that just make us question their integrity as people. And there's a phrase that says, "He who is righteous in the little is righteous also in much." I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but those types of things that we see where we can see that there are some unethical practices. We can see that there are some dishonest people, and those people have got their hand on the situation. They're in control. They're lobbying. They're giving speeches. They're advocating. They're dictating the narratives. That's causing people to question and say, well, can we really trust these people? Because from what we see, they're not the most trustworthy people. And what can we say? We need those people to give a response. With regard to that, and I think that's something significant with regard to that. You can never give a straightforward answer on that, Victor, because to be honest, we don't really know the truth. It's difficult to know what the truth is now, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, because you can't even okay. Go ahead, Simon.
Sorry, Anders is jumping back in. I know that, Simon, that there was a situation where many thought that having sex with babies cured HIV. Yes, it was a sad time. I'm not sure how common it was, but hopefully it's died out. I know the next comment, if someone wants to control us or follow us, they can already do it through their phones, through our digital footprints and many other ways. Yes, that is true, Andrew, but you cannot control people. There's a difference. You can influence and control are two different things. Trustworthy is the word. I like this, Thomas. Yes, very true. Do you feel comfortable with your government of the day, regardless what country it comes from in the first place, is the question on that. But back to you. Oh, we got another one from Anders. Sorry. all these conspiracy theories has to be confronted, and it's not likely that every Western leader is corrupt. We have to go with scientific consensus. Says like a true European. But anyway, oh, I love that. Oh, we're not all bad. Slavery, complications, brother. We've changed. We have. And now we're here. Big love for the podcast. I have to go to work. Keep well. Be good. One day, one and all. Thanks, Thomas. Nice to have you here. And
Thomas, have you been vaccinated, Thomas? If you have, just give us a 1. If not, just give us a 2. Yeah.
I think that's a question for all the audience as well.
Okay. Anders, have you been vaccinated? If you are, give us a 1. If not, just give us a 2. Yeah. So
James.
Okay. Carla, from what you've just said, made me to start thinking that for government to be using celebrities to influence choices for vaccination, go take the jab, they start pulling up their arms. Like, I think that in its own is an agenda, because that means we can't even trust the government. We can't trust the medical people. There's so much information going back and forth. Yes, 2 times.
Yes, Anders, of course he has. Of course.
Yeah. Top man. Anders, we would like to see if you've got like a second head, or if you grow 4 arms,
Ask him, did he have any side effects? Was he on his back for 2 days? That's what I've heard a lot of people say. I was on my back.
Oh, the funny one, the one with the magnet. Have you tested the magnet yet?
Thomas says that's rude, laugh. You never ask a man who hasn't been vaccinated. Fair enough. You have a right.
Okay. That is just, yeah. Carla, schools are coming back shortly. So how do you think this will affect kids?
Again, that goes down to where the kids are, where they go to school, what the situation is like in the country. It depends on the country. It also depends on the neighborhood. It depends on finances to a great deal. And it depends on the access to resources that their parents have. At the moment, I don't think, I can't say for 100% certain, because the information is changing all the time. There are no countries that are making vaccines compulsory for children, but there is some ongoing testing to see how safe it is for children. And there is some beginnings of some moves towards vaccinating certain children. Like in the UK, there are certain children in vulnerable health groups that are now being offered the vaccine between the ages of 12 and 15, according to some sources. And I suppose for those children, a lot of their parents will say that they will affect them in positive ways because it will protect them. But then for other children who perhaps in the future, we don't know what's going to happen in the future and what the expectations are going to be. If children between the ages of, say, 12 and 15 are going to be expected to have the vaccine, and the similar system whereby if they don't have it, they have to have passports and, declare their status, that again is going to have significant impacts, and the same impacts that I mentioned earlier, where it depends on your financial status, it depends on the opportunities that your parents or the access that your parents can give you based on their situation. That's going to affect their lives. It's going to affect jobs in the future. It's going to affect college, university access, all of those things. If you're unvaccinated, that can also put you in the other category. It's them versus us. And we've seen that kind of narrative playing out in some areas as well, where it's like, oh, the unvaccinated are the selfish ones. They're the dirty ones. They're the ones that are over there, and we need to keep away from them because they're the ones that are spreading it and killing everyone. That kind of narrative can be quite toxic, not only for adults, but also for children as well. Is it going to be a new reason to be prejudiced against somebody? Now we're not allowed to be prejudiced against people because of color. We're not allowed to be prejudiced against because of sexual orientation or gender orientation. But are we allowed to be prejudiced against people because they haven't had a vaccination, and they haven't got the COVID passport? Mm-hmm. Is that agenda allowed? Is that narrative acceptable? And are we blowing out of proportion and saying, oh, those people are the ones that kill people? That's going to have a significant impact on kids, isn't it? I imagine them, they can be quite nasty. I imagine kids in the playground being like, you're not vaccinated, because their parents have told them that, because that's what they do. If you say that kind of stuff to your child, they pick up that kind of narrative and then they go and start saying it, don't they?
But to jump in there, Carla, if I was in school and a kid said, I'm not vaccinated and I'd just say, I'd just say what I say as an adult. I say, oh, you're one of the scared ones. Oh, you must be. You're one of the running. No, but I do, and then you just end up beating up the other kid. Really, that's the world happens. I just punch the other kid. Like
but Simon, that's you.
No, but I'm just telling you.
And thank goodness you're not a child anymore.
Bigger kids run the schools. But anyway, we got some comments there. Anders said, if you believe in antibiotics, all the other medicines stop other diseases, you should accept the vaccine. Anders, my friend, I believe you're missing the point here. The point is it hasn't been tested for 7 to 10 years, which is the standard minimum time to test any vaccine. So please understand why people are skeptical along that. We've got our lovely Sasha who's back with us. The effects of the vaccination are totally unknown in long term. Israel's situation is a total disaster. This vaccination is not only ridiculous but dangerous, and they will start to vaccinate every child at 3 years old and every 6 months. Whoa, that's deep. Okay, if people, back to Anders, if people only was a risk to themselves, if not they were not vaccinated, then go ahead. And there's what I will say to you on that is just like polio or yellow fever. You went to Kenya, you had your yellow fever jab. Many people didn't have their jab there. You didn't suddenly make everybody vulnerable, and they didn't make you vulnerable. Your drug works for you. So forget all that suspicion and all that other rubbish. Hot topics. That's an excellent point, Carla. Oh, okay. That's nice. And it's back to this coming in fast. Countries doesn't even let in animals that pose a risk to spread diseases in other countries. Look what happened in the mad cow disease. That was slightly different, Andrew, but it was manufactured, so that's very interesting. Israel Prime Minister said if you refuse the vaccination, you will delay the Messiah coming. Well, we better refuse it then, innit? Well, I'm not ready. Are you ready? I'm not ready. I still got a lot of... No, anyway. Anders, why is every doctor and nurse I know vaccinated if it's dangerous? Well, you don't know them all then, do you? There's 1.7 million people employed in the NHS, and I dare say they're not even half of them are vaccinated, contrary to the government's rhetoric. And finally, Sam, nice to have you here, Sam. He's one of our original podcasters. Great discussion. Wish I had joined earlier. Well, you're here now, Sam. Feel free to join in. Back to you, Victor.
Yeah, Sam, a quick one. Thank you, Sam, for joining us. Sam, if you've been vaccinated, give us a 1, and if not, give us a 2. See, Sasha made some great points just now. And Hala, what do you think about Sasha's point?
I kind of
that's happening in Israel.
Yes, with Sasha, with what she's saying, because Israel, I think it's 98% they are vaccinated, and they had this Delta variant, and also in England, where a lot of people got vaccinated, and they had also the Delta variant. So, are these vaccines safe, and do this vaccine are working for what they are intended for? Because it feels like it weakens the immune system. For what we are seeing now with this Delta variant. And I think if we are going to take this first vaccine, we will take another one, the third one, and the fourth one. And now in France, they are trying in the beginning of winter to inject the third dose for people over 50. So where are we going with this vaccine? Okay. This is the answer, the question that needs to be asked to the government, really.
I think to add to that, before I read these comments, when will it stop? Sorry, just quick one, Matilda, and over to you. Sam says hi. Kier from the Hot Topic says she's had the first jab. Sam says he had no vaccine. And Sasha says, why vaccinate children? The balance risk benefits is not efficient, and vaccinations don't stop transmission of the sickness. Where is the rationality? Excuse me, sorry. Back to you, Matilda.
Yeah, go ahead, Matilda.
But let's look at it. For example, Iran. Iran doesn't have a lot of vaccine and hasn't vaccinated its people. See what's happening to the country. We don't see that in other countries. So maybe vaccine really helps.
Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, this is something, I think it was the comments that we had from Sasha and that earlier that made me think about this. I was just thinking about the narratives, right? And also Anders made some really interesting comments that are very reflective of what a lot of people think now about the danger of not taking the vaccine and how that it has implications for other people. So it's not just about you, it's about others. And I was thinking about when the Pope, earlier in this year, the Pope had come out and said that it was an ethical responsibility for people to take the vaccine. And I found that quite an interesting comment to make, because I wanted to know where the ethics went when this COVID situation first happened. And we still haven't had some basic answers, right? So there's an ethical responsibility to take the vaccine to save lives. But Howler mentioned earlier that we haven't had proper education through the media. The media has been spreading a lot of narratives and bombarding people from day one with all sorts of things. But we still haven't had a clear answer about where it came from, right? That was sort of skipped over at the beginning. China, Wuhan, blah, blah, blah. Ooh, pass, move on. We still haven't had proper healthcare advice blasted out through all the media globally about what you should be eating, how much water you should be drinking, what you should be doing with your children. It's all about hands, safe space, social distance, masks, which we know has nothing to do with the human immune system. We've still not had very clear point by point broadcast about what's in the vaccines, how they're made, how they're developed. Where you get these pictograms that they put up with all the data and all these fancy graphs. We need a fancy graph about what it does to the immune system, how it boosts the immune system, what goes into it, what the ingredients are, because we live in the information age. This is what we keep being told. We live in the information age, and they show us all this stuff, but the basic information hasn't been given. Lots of information has been given about why we should take it and how to stay away and how to fix the problem, but no information has been given about how in 2020, with all the technology that we've got and all the advancements that we've got, we even had a pandemic in the first place. Those basic things are all missing. And you think, well, why? Why would they be missing? That kind of stuff doesn't make sense.
Okay, thanks, Carla. James says, why are the vaccinated concerned about the unvaccinated? This is without doubt the worst product ever forced upon the world. It doesn't work, yet costs so much. And it's hitting back. Every medicine has side effects. For some people, you can see the same with regular painkillers. That is true, but it's been tried and tested, and people know what happens if you take too many. Iran is a good example. I have friends there. They say the situation is desperate. Hot Topic says each media source has an agenda, whether pro or against vaccines. That's true. We will know where it came from later. We can't wait for that info. If a disease spread from a security lab, it still needs to be stopped. Fair enough. I can't argue that.
That's fair.
James comes back. Odd how a product is made to fix a virus that has not even been investigated as to its origins. Because how can you vaccinate against something if you don't know the origins? Argumentatively. But anyway, back to you, Victor.
Yeah, I think that is a lovely point there, James, because if we know the origin, maybe half of the problem is solved. The vaccinated will be, because Simon, before this call, before we went live, we were speaking about the origin of vaccines, or one of the origins of vaccines from one of the ancestors. Can you just tell us about that?
Oh yes, in Africa, of course, the motherland. We had our methods, and sadly, through our slave trade, not our slave trade, our involuntarily move across the world, One of the slave masters in America was sick, and one of the slaves did some old Asian African thing where he basically takes a bit of the sickness from the contaminated and puts a little microscopic on that person in their bloodstream. They get a bit of fever and then they become cured because their body adapts to, builds an immune system, in other words, to that virus, as in chickenpox, chickenpox, measles, German measles, all those kind of things, where your body can naturally say, okay, we've got this, we're not blah, 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 in that respect. And from then, it's been monetized on and built into pharmaceutical companies have taken it. That is the history in my layman's terms. People can go and look it up later on for themselves.
Great. So as we're rounding up now, I won't, my personal opinion, I will be taking the vaccine very soon. So, but I have to do some more research regards that. So I believe you should do your own research regards how you take the vaccine, you know, and
got some more comments here. Sam says reality is that any other information that goes against the narrative is shut down. Call it, can someone mute please? Call it whatever, but it is the world's orchestrated movement to hide something. Call it whatever you want. Okay, fair enough, Sam. I don't disagree with that. Israel is the country with the most high percentage of population vaccinated, but this vaccine don't stop the sickness. So why do they want a vaccine every 6 months against different variants? Such ex-Prime Minister
Netanyahu.
Thank you. They also want a vaccination for 3 years old children. There's a cognitive disorder. Beyond those events, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, where you should go to school and pay attention. And this goes, the new technology with DNA and such make it possible to try out medicals in new ways that's quicker than before. And Andrew's hit the nail on the head. Messing with your DNA is not a recommended thing. You are not God, and if you haven't tested it, you don't know the true side effects. So why would you mess with your DNA? Thank you for bringing that point up there, Andrew. I know you're going to come on with another comment. I know what medical companies has done in Africa countries and what CIA did with Americans, but this is for a global consensus. I don't agree with that at all, Andrew. Africa, you've had Haiti, many African leaders who've been executed, probably by the CIA, if not the Royal.
Simon, we don't know that. There's no fact about that, so you can't just throw that out like that.
I didn't say as a fact, but I did say it's suspicious that all of our leaders who go against the vaccine have been executed or died suspiciously because they didn't
have accidents. They've had accidents.
Well, you don't have an accident if you're shot 12 times with a submachine gun. That's not an accident. Well, your wife hides in the kitchen. No, that's not an accident. So if we're going to go down that road. James comes in. Nice piano, Simon. Good night. Thank you. He likes my piano. Hey! Anders, if we're not God, if we're not God, why does we stop diseases instead of praying? Okay, I think what Andrew's trying to say and said we shouldn't use our ability to understand medicine, but I believe we should. But there are certain things that we should, as we're coming back to this all the time, Andrew, testing. Kier says on Hot Topics, great chat, love heart. And back to you guys. Thanks for all the questions. I believe we're closing up, comments. I believe we're closing down now. So please hold off, and we'll back to Victor.
Yeah. So thank you very much to Anders. You've been a great sparring partner for Simon today. Thank you, Sasha. Your contribution will always be appreciated here. Hot Topics Live. Yeah, you are some of our mentors there. Yeah. And also to James Thomas, who left earlier on. I would say thank you very much for contributing to this wonderful episode. We're always here every Monday, 7 p.m. British Standard Time. Very soon it's going to be 8 p.m. French time and 3 p.m. East Coast time. Yeah. And also, our lovely host here, we thank you guys for today's conversation. And for Matilda, who has put in so much effort just to join us up in the air. And Matilda, let's not take any more of your time. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us where to find your podcast before we go?
My podcast is Coffee with Matilda, Journey to Self, and you can find it on Facebook, YouTube, and all the podcast platforms. Over to you, Carla.
Yes, thanks, Matilda, and have a safe flight. So my podcast is Women Stories Podcast, where I share real stories from real women. And tune in for a new episode next week. Over to you, Carla.
And my podcast is the Wonder and Wellbeing Podcast for parents and teachers and anyone interested in discussions around education and wellbeing. And you can find it everywhere that you find podcasts. If you don't find it somewhere and you want it there, let me know. Back to you, Victor.
Yeah, what about yourself, Simon?
Hi, Simon Rushton. My podcast is Taxi Chronicles. It's on all major platforms. It's just short episodes, 5 to 15 or 20 minutes sometimes. Me interviewing people about their everyday life, and they share their personal experiences of what they're getting through. I'll just read out these last couple of free comments. Sasha said, all serious medical references are denouncing this crazy situation, but no medias are reporting that it will be a disaster in a few years about the consequences of this mad policy based only on political views from science. Another one, vaccinating children is just a total nonsense if you refer only about the data we have actually. And Andrew says, let's hope the virus becomes weaker like many scientists say it can. And he says, thank you for today. Thank you, Andrew. Great to have you here. Great to have you here, Sasha.
Yeah.
Back to you, Victor.
So I'm Victor. So I'm the host of the Diaspora Entrepreneurs Podcast. You can find my podcast on all major platforms and also on YouTube. Today we don't have one of our co-hosts here with us, who is Nelson J. Zambrano. He is the host of Invest in America. He's going to be with us very soon. So he's very well and he's on top of his game. Yeah. So our topic today was about the COVID vaccine passport, which is going to be used to certify your COVID status and how it will help you help or affect your job. We don't know. We don't know how far they're going to push it. We don't know if it's going to be affecting the kids. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to be affecting our finances because we don't have jobs. And if some of us who are still skeptical about the vaccine, about the status, about we may or may not have jobs or contracts. So, but if you want to take the vaccine, you can go ahead, but do your research about it. If you want to wait. If you don't want to, say no. But all the same, what I would say from us here to you is that stay safe. So for now, I would say bye-bye to everyone who joined us on this wonderful conversation. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.